Wait for everybody to get into the room. All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2024 Trademark Agent Skills Exam Candidate Orientation Session. My name is Jen Slobodkin, and I am joined today by my colleague Tiffany. Tiffany will introduce herself and explain the interpretation option to listen in French.
Bonjour à tous, donc je suis Anne-Tiffany Camus, je travaille comme administratrice, excusez-moi, avec Jennifer Slabotkin. Pour les candidats qui souhaitent écouter cette présentation en français, vous avez l'option en bas de votre écran sur l'icône en forme de globe. Cliquez sur Interprétation, puis sur Français, et vous aurez un interprète qui traduira tout ce que nous allons dire à présent en anglais. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. So we're going to check first the agenda. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things. So the exam date, the test specifications, the exam platform, the candidate instructions, the results and scoring. That would be, I think, a big part of the presentation. The process, questions, and how to contact us or how to contact our different providers. As you may already know, the dates for the exams of September 18th and September 19th, same time, each time from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right, thank you, Tiffany, for going over those basics. I'm going to go through some of the test specification information. CPATA develops each examination using a set of test specifications which are approved by the registration committee to ensure that the exams test defensively. The test specifications, which you can find on our website, outline what an exam will measure in terms of content domain, so that includes the areas and the weights of those areas, as well as guidelines on how the content is to be measured. Such guidelines are expressed in terms of structure, so they include format, length, and cognitive level, and context, so the circumstances in which each examination question is framed and that can influence their interpretation. The content weights for the qualifying examinations were each set by a group of practicing agents with guidance from a psychometrician. These weights were informed by average criticality and importance ratings from the large-scale competency validation survey administered in September of 2022. The recommended content weights were approved by the registration committee. The trademark agent skills examination is completed over 2 days. Each day tests a different component. Component A covers registrability and strategy. This is the component being written on September 18th. Component B covers prosecution, opposition, and Section 45 proceedings, and this is the component being written the following day on September 19th. The two components are scored together as a single examination. The examination uses a limited open book format with electronic access through the exam platform to the Trademarks Act and trademarks regulations. Candidates are able to access these materials as secure but searchable electronic aids through the exam platform. This helps ensure that everyone has access to identical resources, reduces the risk of unauthorized materials, and helps to preserve the integrity of the exam. We have uploaded an instructional video on our website for how to search in the exam aids through the secure platform. This is something you will need to do during the live proctor check-in next week. The examination is being administered using a computer-based platform supported by Paradigm Testing. The examination will be remotely proctored using live proctors from Monitor EDU. French-speaking proctors are available upon request. Please contact the registration department as soon as possible to arrange for a French-speaking proctor if that is something that you wish to have. Note that these are the same companies that we use to administer the knowledge exams, so you should be already very familiar with both the platform as well as the proctoring process.
Here are the requirements for taking the exam. The specific technical requirements are available in the instructions and protocol guide, which is published on our website. In order to complete the exams, you will need the following: a laptop or desktop computer, the most recent version of the secure browser. Note, there are French directions located at the bottom. Please scroll to access them if needed. A mobile phone running at least Android OS 6.0 or Apple iOS 12.0 with a functioning camera and microphone. Google Meet app downloaded to your mobile device. A steady and reliable internet connection. Wi-Fi will be required for mobile streaming with a minimum upload speed of 1 megabytes per second. A 6-foot extension cord and phone cord, a phone stand, or something to prop the mobile phone on. Government issued ID, candidate ID, which is provided on your confirmation of exam registration issued by CPATA. And finally, a quiet venue. You must be alone in the room. Here are some tips for setting up your room. There is a video linked in the setup guide. Please keep these things in mind when setting up your testing environment. There should be adequate lighting. Walls should be blank. Your table or desk should be clear other than your laptop computer. The areas beneath the desk and chair should be clear. The computer and mobile phone should be plugged in for the duration of the exam. You should have within reach a 6-foot extension cord and use it, if requested by the proctor, to move the computer and mobile phone. You should inform other individuals that may share space with you about your exam date and time and confirm that they will remain quiet during the exam and will not enter the exam room. You must be alone in the exam room for the duration of the exam. No one can enter the exam room during the exam. And finally, non-required electronics and any security or recording devices in the room must be turned off and put away in a safe place so that you will not be able to reach them. Connecting with a proctor to test the exam platform is now a mandatory requirement. This is true even if you have previously tested before. The live proctor check-in instructions are provided in the instructions and protocol guide. If you do not participate in this process, any request to nullify an exam attempt for technology-related reasons may not be approved. Proctors are available 24/7. You will be able to test your computer system and ensure everything works properly before the exams are written the following week. This is not a full mock practice exam. Will only be presented with the published practice exams questions again. This is to give candidates more familiarity with the platform and what to expect on exam days. The instructions for connecting with a proctor for the checking are published on our website.
Thanks, Tifan. So I wanted to go through a little bit more of the live proctor check-in information. As Tifan mentioned, it is mandatory this time around, even if you have tested before. And that's because we want to make sure that everybody tests all of these different functionalities on the platform so that when the exam time comes, there aren't any issues that you need to troubleshoot and you don't have to stress out about worrying about technology. You can focus on demonstrating your competency. So the check-in with the proctor next week, so the next week would be September 9th to the 13th, I think it is. It's mandatory for all writers. You'll receive an email from Monitor EDU on Friday, September 6th, so this Friday, with further instructions. During the check-in, it's important that you test the following. Obviously, connecting with the proctor is the first thing that you're going to be testing. Launching the secure browser, so making sure that you have that appropriately set up on your computer, whatever computer you're going to be using for the exam, and to actually launch the secure browser. Typing into a response box, so making sure you can click into a response box, you can type something in there, you can edit your response, and you can move between questions. So there's different ways you can move between questions, and we'll go through functionality a little bit later on in the presentation, but you should be testing different types of moving between questions, either using the previous and next buttons or using the question navigation at the bottom of the screen. Bookmarking questions, so try to bookmark a question or two during the live proctor check-in to make sure that that function is working for you. Use the font size, highlight, strike through functionality. So there's a section on the platform, and we'll go through this at the end of the presentation, where you can actually increase or decrease the font size. So you should try that. You should try highlighting text, and you should also try striking through text and removing the highlight and strike through. And I'll show you how to do that as well toward the end of the presentation. And then accessing and searching in the exam aids. So again, there is a video that we have posted on our website. I'll show you the link to that at the end of the session, where you can watch how to search in the exam aids on the secure platform, because the current link on the website isn't for the secure platform. It's just open, so you won't be able to test that until you actually get into the secure platform. But make sure that you do that as well. You will receive your candidate number on Friday, September the 6th, when we send out confirmations of registration. So keep in mind that is something that you will need, and you will need to provide to your proctor on the exam administration days. It is not your CPATA ID. So your CPATA ID is a public ID that is used to identify you as an agent in training. Your candidate number is an anonymized unique number that is used only for the purpose of this exam administration. So when you're giving your candidate ID to your proctor, you're not giving them your CPATA ID. That's something completely different. You're going to look on your confirmation of registration for your candidate number. So again, before the exam days, this is all preparation. You want to do this ahead of time in terms of testing. You don't want to test on exam day. As I mentioned a few times already, the check-in is mandatory. So you're going to test your equipment and everything during the check-in. Have your government issued ID with you and ready for proctor check-in. So that again will relieve some stress. You won't have to run around trying to find something. Make sure your equipment's tested, have your ID with you, and have your candidate number, and then you should be able to go. A couple more instructions for exam days themselves. The first step is to connect with a proctor. If you don't connect with a proctor, then you're not going to be able to access the exam. You must connect with the proctor first. So don't wait around waiting for an email or something like that to be sent to you to connect with the proctor. You have to connect with the proctor. And that's the same process that candidates followed to connect with the proctor during the knowledge exams earlier this year. So that should be something that you're already familiar with doing. So that's step one. Around 12 o'clock, no later than 12:30, you should be connecting with a proctor and filling in the sign-in form. Step two, make sure you have Google Meets app pre-approved on your, or downloaded on your cell phone to make sure that that's ready to go. Step three, have your government issued picture ID and candidate number ready. And then step four, after you complete the check-in process with the proctor, you'll receive the exam code to log into the exam and start the exam. So the proctor is going to go through the entire registration process with you. They're going to check your ID. They're going to do the room, security, and system check and provide you with the login information. It's important that you connect with the proctor before the start of the exam at 1 o'clock. Proctors will be assisting more than just one candidate login. So you need to ensure that everybody starts at the same time, roughly, it's helpful to connect starting around noon and no later than 12:30. All of these instructions are provided in the instructions and protocol guide that is posted on our website. Additional instructions for exam days. During the exam, you may not access the following types of personal items. So you may not access a mobile phone. However, I put a star there because the only mobile phone that you're allowed to have with you is the one that you're using for proctoring. You can't have any access to any other mobile phones or electronic devices during the exam. No headphones, no headsets, either wired or Bluetooth, no handheld computers or other electronic devices, no watches, no wallets, no purses, bags, or coats, no books, notes, or any other materials. You may not wear hats or any other head coverings unless they are worn as a religious observance. Please note that you cannot bring any pre-printed materials with you to the exam. This is a big difference from the legacy exam. So if there's anybody here who wrote the legacy exams, who was permitted to pre-print their materials, such as the Act and the regulations, you are no longer permitted to do that. This includes copy of the Act and the regs, and as previously mentioned, candidates will be able to access these materials as secure and searchable electronic aids through the exam platform. This is ensuring that everyone has access to identical resources It reduces the risk of unauthorized materials, and it helps to preserve the integrity of the examination. During the exam, something might happen that you want to report to the college, so we have worked on a process called incident reports with Monitor EDU. Monitor EDU uses Google Meet to support their proctoring services. See the instructions for downloading the applications that are in the candidate guide on our website. This allows exam sessions to be recorded. The recordings will be saved with Monitor EDU for a finite period of time. Therefore, if something occurs during your exam that you think CPATA should be aware of, you should send a request to schedule@monitoredu.com with your name, candidate number, and the date of the exam when the incident occurred to request that they share the exam recording with CPATA for further investigation. These requests must be submitted to Monitor EDU prior to the release of the examination results. Please see the candidate guide on our website for these details again. Snacks and water. You may have a drink with you, but it must be in a clear vessel, such as a clear bottle, a cup, a glass, etc., with no labels. If you have a bottle with a label on it, you must remove the label. You may also have snacks with you, but they must be in a clear Ziploc style bag so that the proctor can see what is in the bag. Also, please tell the proctor at the beginning when you're checking in that you'd like to have snacks with you during the exam so that they are aware. Email confirmation from Monitor EDU. I mentioned that on Friday, anybody who's registered for the exam will receive an email confirmation about the live proctor check-in next week, but you'll also receive an email confirmation from Monitor EDU the Friday before the exam week, so next Friday the 13th, before the exams, that will provide you with the protocol for the exam days and some system setup information that you should already have and be familiar with because you've gone through the live proctor check-in process. Earplugs. If you wish to wear earplugs during the exam, they will need to be new foam earplugs that are still in the package. Candidates must open them up in front of the proctor, and candidates must advise CPATA if they wish to use earplugs prior to the start of the exam so that the proctor can be informed. Jewelry. To support the integrity and security of the exam process, you will be asked to remove jewelry before the exam. This includes earrings, necklaces, bracelets, etc. And finally, scrap paper. Each candidate is permitted to bring 2 pages of blank paper or lined paper and 2 writing utensils, such as a pen or a pencil, to each day of the examination, as the ability to jot notes on scrap paper can facilitate cognitive processing, reduce memory load, and support accessibility. However, candidates who opt to use scrap paper will be required to destroy the paper in front of the proctor at the end of the exam. The electronic notepad will still be available in the exam aid section of the platform for those that wish to take notes through the platform. Multiple monitors. Candidates can only use one monitor, but they may choose which monitor they use if they have multiple monitors. So if you have a system set up where you have your laptop connected to an external monitor and your external monitor is a larger screen, then you want to use that, that's fine. You can set that up as long as you are only using one screen. So you are not allowed to use 2 screens. Your other screen will either have to be covered completely or closed. Bathroom breaks. Time is not added back for bathroom breaks, but they are permitted. The exam is only paused or time is only added back for those who have approved accommodations. When a candidate leaves the testing area for a bathroom break, proctors will perform another security check when the candidate re-enters the testing area. Candidates who are absent from the testing area for an extended period of time, for example, longer than a couple of minutes, or who take frequent breaks will be flagged for exam security. If exam security issues are detected, the candidate's examination attempt may be invalidated. Technical issues. In the event of any technical issues, candidates must get the proctor's attention. This will allow the candidate to communicate with a proctor who will assist them. Time is only added back or the exam is only paused if the issue is beyond the candidate's control.
You have a maximum of 3 hours to complete your examination. All exams will be submitted 3 hours after you have started your exam. It is your responsibility to ensure that your environment is adequate for testing. The examination is being displayed in the language of choice you selected on your registration form. Please answer in the official language of your choice, English or French. Computer problems, internet-related difficulties, and connectivity issues, including problems resulting from a power outage, should be directed to the live proctor during the exam. As this is an individual examination, you're strictly forbidden from consulting any other individuals or materials. Let's start. Any time missed due to late start, which was not attributed to a technology issue, will be deducted from the total examination time. Read the questions carefully. Exam 8 translations. A PDF of the French version of the exam has been included as an exam aid in the platform. You can review the French questions and responses options using that PDF if needed throughout the exam. Exit survey. Upon submission of the exam, you will be presented with a link to an optional survey that asks about any issues you may have experienced during the exam. To complete the survey, click on Survey on the submission page. A new window will open with the survey questions. Please complete the survey and click Submit. Once the survey has been submitted, close the Survey tab and then click on Close on the exam submission page. Note that once your exam has been submitted and you're presented with a survey page, you will not be able to go back into the exam. The system will ask you to confirm your wish to submit your exam before the submission is made.
All right, let's go through the exam platform a little bit. We're going to take a look at how to log in. So once you've connected with a proctor and you've been checked in, you'll receive a link to the exam. You set your language of preference and you'll enter your login credentials. In terms of accessing and starting the exam, you will see the exams on the dashboard. You should only have one. The first day will be component A, the second day will be component B, and then you'll click on Start Test to begin the examination. After you have clicked on Start Test, then you will be presented with the instructions for the exam and the candidate agreement, and you'll be asked to agree to the candidate agreement in order to actually launch the exam. So at this point, the time has not started yet. The timer, which we'll see on the slide where we show what the actual exam platform looks like, you'll see in the top right-hand corner, that's where the exam timer is. But at this point, the timer has not started yet. So take your time reading the instructions, take your time agreeing to the candidate agreement. You can also read all of these things ahead of time using the platform that's currently up on our website. So I strongly suggest you go through the platform and read the instructions, read the candidate guides. You don't have to worry about any of that during the exam itself. It'll be the exact same information. Now, I mentioned to you previously that it's important for you to understand how to navigate between questions and review previously completed questions. So in order to navigate between questions, you can use the previous or next buttons that are under each question. You can click on the question numbers at the bottom of the screen, or you can navigate to attempted, incomplete, or flagged questions using the question review function that's at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That being said, we strongly recommend that candidates confirm that all questions have been answered before they submit the exam. Questions that are blue have been answered. Questions that are green have not yet been answered. I encourage you to check the question review section in the bottom right-hand corner to ensure that you've answered all of the questions before you submit your exam. Here is a sample view of what the exam might look like. And again, we've put a couple of questions on the platform already, so you should be able to see exactly what some of the sample questions look like on the platform. A lot of the questions are set up to be split screen, so there'll be some materials or background information on the left-hand side, and then the question and the response box will be on the right-hand side. We usually use this type of setup if there are multiple questions using the same background material, and so candidates can still see the background information on the left while scrolling through the different questions on the right-hand side. In terms of the features, there is the highlight feature and the strike through feature, which we'll go through when I open up the exam platform a little bit later on. You'll also see on the side, you'll see the exam aids tab. So that is where you'll find the electronic notebook as well as the links to the PDF exam aids, which include the Act and the regulations. In the top right-hand corner, you'll also see the timer, and the timer will start as soon as you launch the exam. So as soon as you click on agree to the candidate agreement and the exam window opens, then that window will, or that timer will start to count down, and you will have 3 hours to complete the exam. Now, if you complete the exam before the 3 hours, then you would just go to the bottom right-hand corner and you press on submit. Then you're prompted to answer the survey questions if you wish to do that, and then you can close the exam page. Otherwise, if you take the full 3 hours, then it will count down to the very last second, and then it will auto submit for you. So even if you're in the middle of typing a question, if it counts down to the very last second, then the exam will auto submit and you won't have any more time to do that. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye on the clock in the top right-hand corner to make sure that you are on track to making sure you finish the examination. Now, we've added a couple of more instructions to our website about searching the exam aids. So for the Act and the regulations, use the table of contents and click on the section you wish to jump to. So that's very similar with a lot of PDFs. You go to the table of contents, you click on the heading you wish to jump to, and then you'll be brought to that section. For all of the PDFs, there will be a search field where you can type a keyword and then it'll search the document for you. And so there's a video, as I mentioned, up on the website that demonstrates how to use this functionality. And it's something that you should be testing when you do the live proctor check-in next week. Now, during the examination, there could be some issues that you come across. Hopefully, there aren't any issues whatsoever, and you have a very smooth sailing exam experience. But it's important for you to understand what to do if any of these types of issues occur and how to troubleshoot them. So for a power outage is a sudden loss of electricity that interrupts the exam delivery or causes a test taker's device to shut down. If a candidate loses power and the device shuts down, first of all, you need to remain calm. If the computer is off, then the exam timer will automatically be paused. So you don't have to worry about the counter going down and you losing time on the exam. The candidate should get the proctor's attention to let them know what's happened, and then they can guide them on what to do. Monitor EDU will escalate issues to CPATA. I'm on the call during the entirety of the examination to provide them with instructions, and we can talk about backup locations or options if the power is not restored right away. And Tifan is going to go over how to get the attention of a proctor in a few slides. Network connectivity issues. So we are writing things online. Obviously, you want to have a strong internet connection, but sometimes there are network connectivity issues. I experienced them myself, and I'm actually using my personal hotspot to do this presentation today just to make sure I don't have any internet connectivity issues during the presentation. So do whatever you need to do in terms of making sure that you are confident in your internet connectivity. However, things happen and network connectivity issues do occur. So if you have problems with your internet that prevents you from accessing the exam platform or causes the exam to freeze or disconnect, then you'll need to let the proctor know right away. The proctor will then ask the candidate to restart your computer. And while that's happening, if the candidate has access to the internet router or modem, then they'll need to restart that as well. If the issue does not resolve itself, then Monitor EDU will escalate the issue to CPATA, and we will talk about backup locations or options if the issue persists. Technical issues and software malfunction with the platform. Issues with the exam software, such as errors, bugs, incompatibilities, or crashes that interfere with exam delivery or prevent test takers from progressing through the examination, are one of the other things that you potentially could experience. Hopefully you don't experience any of these things, but if you do, then you need to get the proctor's attention right away for troubleshooting assistance. Remember, if you experience any issues, you need to get the proctor's attention. Remain calm and get the proctor's attention. So Tifan will now explain how to do that.
Thank you, Chen. So if you need the proctor at all during the exam, please say your name and raise your hand and wait for the proctor to connect back through audio with you. Proctors can manage more than one test taker at the same time. So if it takes them a minute to respond, it could be that they're assisting another test taker. If they do not respond, please pick up your phone and wave at the camera. or hold your phone so they can see that you need something. Please do not disconnect from the video chat without talking to the proctor first.
Thank you, Tifan. Those are all really important instructions. Okay, now I'd like to turn our attention to results and scoring, since we've kind of covered the basics of the exam, and everybody should already be familiar with functionality because you've done the knowledge exams before. So first let's talk about results and scoring. So there's no single method to determine a defensible pass mark for all tests or purposes. Different methods are suited to different circumstances. As a licensing body, CPATA needed to select an approach to standard setting based on the purpose of the examinations, which is to assess entry-level competencies as well as how closely the method aligned with the assessment goals. For a high-stakes licensing examination, in other words, a test with important consequences, the selected standard setting approach should relate to the purpose of the exam, be appropriate to the level of complexity of the competencies to be assessed by the exam, be appropriate to the specific format of the exam, for example, multiple choice versus performance-based, be supported by scholarly research supporting its use, and for practical reasons should reflect the availability of resources such as time, expertise in statistical analysis, and availability of experts. In 2023, the registration committee approved the methodologies which will be used on the new examinations to determine the pass marks. For the skills examination, they approved the borderline regression methodology. The borderline regression method allows the pass mark to be set using performance from all test takers, and it is particularly suited to small-scale assessments because it uses data from all examinees in the derivation of a cut score. Consistent with other high-stakes exams, a minimum standard will be determined through the borderline regression standard setting process, which involves the exam advisory group, who are practicing agents. The exam advisory group will evaluate each test taker using a standardized marking guide and then provide an overall impression of the test taker's ability using a rating scale. The pass mark is based on the relationship between test scores and the overall impression ratings of the test taker's performance. Candidates who demonstrate competency on this exam will not receive a performance report. So you'll receive a letter that says that you demonstrated competency on the exam. Congratulations. Please apply for your Class 1 license within the next 6 months. The result, competency demonstrated, means that performance on the exam met or exceeded the expectations or the minimum standards, showing a general understanding of the skills associated with trademark agent practice, and that subject to meeting other requirements, the candidate is eligible to apply for a Class 1 license. Candidates who do not yet demonstrate competency will receive a performance report, which outlines the candidate's performance. The results, competency not yet demonstrated, means that performance on the exam did not meet the minimum standard. The candidate did not yet prove a sufficient understanding of the general skills associated with trademark agent practice. The candidate may have gaps in their understanding of key skills, and this suggests that the candidate needs further preparation and study before reattempting the trademark agent skills exam or engaging in trademark agent practice. The performance report also includes an overall performance descriptor that compares the candidate's performance to the minimum standard. This information, along with the measurement variability data, informs an estimate of how close the candidate's performance was to the passing standard. Measurement variability data is a statistical summary that represents the dispersion or spread of data points in a data set. Candidates who receive an overall result of competency not yet demonstrated will also receive a corresponding performance descriptor of either approaches the standard or below the standard. Approaches the standard means that the candidate's performance on the exam was close to the passing standard, showing some potential. However, some improvement is needed to meet the standard. Below the standard means that the candidate's performance on the exam was below the passing standard and that improvement is needed. Finally, the performance report lists the skills areas tested on the exam, as well as the percentage of marks on the exam related to each area. Skills areas with more marks have a greater effect on your overall performance. The performance details show whether your performance performance in each skills area meets means is equal to or exceeds or is below a minimum threshold that is set for each area. The area level thresholds are set using data from the standard setting process. It's important to keep in mind that only the total score determines the result. There is no separate pass mark for each skills area, and stronger performance in one area can offset weaker performance in another. Keep in mind that the area level results are based on fewer questions than the overall result, making them less reliable for predicting future performance. For this reason, the meets or below insights should only be used to help candidates better self-assess their skills in these areas, not as a definitive statement of their ability. Now, just as with the knowledge exams, we understand that test takers may be used to seeing specific scores, and that these scores provide a tangible measure of performance. However, the primary purpose of our exams is not to rank order test takers or to precisely measure their depth of knowledge or skill. It's to determine whether a test taker has achieved a certain level of competence. The important question is not how much better did one person do compared to the other, but has this person met the minimum level of competence required to practice safely and effectively? Think of the licensing process in terms of a series of hurdles. The goal of completing these hurdles isn't necessarily about how much faster one person is than the other. The primary objective is to determine whether each person can successfully complete each hurdle. A person who clears the hurdles by 1 inch is just as successful in this context as a person who clears them by 1 foot. In a similar vein, our qualifying exams work more like a series of hurdles rather than a race against other competitors. As such, the score isn't as meaningful as the overall decision of competency demonstrated or competency not yet demonstrated. You can also think of the pass mark as analogous to the height requirement for amusement park rides. When you approach a ride, there is a sign indicating a height that guests must be this tall in order to ride. And the point of this measure isn't to see who the tallest person is, but to ensure everyone on the ride meets a minimum height for safety reasons. Similarly, our exam isn't about who achieves the highest score, but whether each candidate has reached the necessary height or level of competence to practice the profession safely and effectively. In addition, focusing on the result rather than the numerical score can help reduce unhelpful competition amongst test takers, which lessens test-related stress. Our goal is to ensure that each licensed individual is qualified and competent. We have chosen these methodologies of reporting for our exams because we believe this method best serves that purpose. The approach focuses on the goal of achieving general proficiency rather than encouraging test takers to chase after high scores. Now, finally, you might be wondering if you can challenge your result. The answer is no. The short answer is no, you cannot challenge your result. The long answer is the process used to create, administer, and score the CPATA skills exams employed psychometric best practices at every stage to ensure that it is valid, reliable, defensible, and fair. For development, practicing agents were recruited to develop the 2024 exam forms in accordance with the approved test specifications. They were required to adhere to a development guide which outlined fundamentals, recommended practices specific to developing constructed response and performance-based questions, and writing conventions that applied to all items of various types. After exam development, the exam forms they underwent a rigorous review process to ensure that the questions were appropriate and that the answer key was correct. This included a pilot test. So independent subject matter experts, in other words, not anyone involved with the development of the exam form, actually took the exam and reviewed it for the following. Alignment to the test specifications, so whether the exam focused on must-know aspects of core concepts. Context, whether the contextual information respected and represented a diversity of contexts so that candidates from a wide range of populations were able to understand the content. Constructed response best practices, whether facts and materials maintained expected length, cognitive complexity, and difficulty. Questions and materials were as short as possible while supplying enough information to answer the questions, and questions were clear, free from tricks, They were plausible and realistic. Time, whether or not test takers could complete the exam in the 3-hour time frame. And overall writing. Was the writing error-free, simple, clear, concise, consistent, logical, and inclusive? On top of that review was a psychometric review. A psychometrician, someone who's an expert in defensible assessment, was involved in the development of the exam form and the key to confirm that they adhered to defensible, valid, and reliable practices. Translation review. Bilingual practicing agents from the exam advisory groups reviewed the translations to ensure that the exam forms were equivalent and meant the same thing in each language. We also implemented several procedures for marking. Before marking begins, each exam advisory group member is going to receive general training from an expert in defensible assessment, the psychometrician, and will take part in specific training for their part of the exam. They also complete practice exercises, known as calibration exercises, to ensure consistency in scoring. The exams are then marked using a detailed scoring key, which is updated as needed during the marking process to keep it consistent and accurate. 2 independent markers will score each submission. Each marker does this independently, recording their own score. Then the marking pair discusses discrepant marks at the question level. After discussing, they agree on a final score for each question or set of marks. Before finalizing scores, each exam is checked for errors such as missing scores, incomplete rating scales, or data entry errors. Any errors are corrected and reported to the relevant exam advisory group. After marking, we determine the pass mark using the standard setting process that I described earlier. Once a pass mark is calculated, we identify the borderline cases. These borderline cases are then reviewed by the examination advisory group who did not mark the exam initially. And so we're not looking at the borderline above the borderline pass mark. We're looking at all of the ones that are below the borderline pass mark. So the people that are in the approaches the standard group. So an independent exam advisory group member who did not mark the exam initially will complete the review. These reviewers do not see the original scores to avoid bias and ensure a fresh perspective. Once the initial review is done, the reviewers receive the original notes and scores without knowing who made them. This information helps ensure that important perspectives were not overlooked, helps maintain consistency in scoring, and ensures the review aligns with exam standards. Anonymizing the notes and scores helps prevent bias and ensures fairness. The reviewer's mark is averaged with the original mark, giving both equal weight. This balance combines the benefits of collaborative marking with the independent assessment of the reviewer. In exceptional cases, such as where there is a significant difference between scores, we may modify or enhance this review process to maintain fairness. Finally, the registration committee will approve the pass mark, and the results will be finalized using that information. Any additional borderline cases that are identified after the pass mark is approved are reviewed according to the described process. The results file will then be checked again for accuracy before creating the performance reports. That all being said, candidates are not permitted to access or review their exam materials after the exam is administered. This protects the security and integrity of the exam process. As described, to address any concerns about this change in process, we have implemented and are implementing many checks and controls to verify the accuracy of skills exam results before they are provided to candidates. The borderline case review process will happen automatically and at no additional cost to the candidate. This streamlined process for scoring and borderline case review preemptively addresses any concerns about the accuracy of the results and removes the stress and financial impact of the recorrection process from candidates, as each recorrection request for a component of the skills exam would cost $500 plus tax. You might be wondering how many times you can attempt the skills exam. The skills exams are administered once in 2024 and then once per year thereafter in the fall. All agents in training are permitted to attempt the skills exam up to 2 times. Agents in training who do not attempt the skills exam within 2 years after the day on which they complete their training program will be required to provide and complete a remedial training and education plan before being permitted to attempt the exam. Agents in training who do not yet demonstrate competency on the skills exam after 2 attempts will also be required to provide and complete a remedial training and education plan before being permitted to attempt the exam again. Finally, agents in training who have attempted the skills exam once and request a delay in writing a subsequent administration of the exam for a reason beyond their control, and who do not attempt it again within a period of 2 years, will also be required to complete and provide and complete a remedial training and education plan prior to being able to attempt the exam again. So in other words, after 2 attempts, you are not barred from writing the exam again. You are not deregistered. You are not delicensed. But you have to demonstrate to the registrar that what you are doing in order to improve your skills in the areas in which you are deficient. So you will have to sit down with your training supervisor and figure out what you'll need to do in order to bridge those gaps, submit that plan to the registrar, complete that plan, have your supervisor confirm you've completed that plan before we will allow you to register for a subsequent administration. And that just makes sure that people are not just waiting between exam attempts and not doing anything to improve their knowledge or skills between exam attempts. And this will get people through the licensure process faster with fewer delays. CPATA uses various methods to detect and address issues and irregularities. At the end of each exam administration, CPATA solicits feedback from test takers about extenuating circumstances. For example, compassionate consideration, medical reasons, or process anomalies that a test taker believes materially impaired their exam performance. Additionally, CPATA actively seeks and analyzes information from test takers, exam administrators, and experts to identify irregularities in an exam administration, including for misconduct. In the case of extenuating circumstances or any irregularity, CPATA reserves the right to withhold any result, to nullify or invalidate any exam submission, to subject any exam or part thereof to further review, and take other action, including disciplinary action, if appropriate, in order to preserve the integrity of the licensing process. So we wanted to go through, we'll open it up for questions at the end of the session, but we wanted to go through quickly some preparation and resource information. I'll also show you these things on the website. So I'll stop sharing my screen in just a second, and I'll share the website with you. So resources are available on our website to assist candidates in preparing for the skills exam. This includes the candidate guide, the setup guide, what to study, the test specifications, and the sample exam. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment and then reshare. If I can do that. Stop share. Alrighty. So I'm going to pull up the website. No, that's not what I wanted. Let's just close that. There we go. Okay. Now we're ready. Okay, so you should be seeing 2 web pages side by side. One is the English, one is the French. And you can find this on our website under Agents and Training, and then Trademark Agent Qualifying Examination. So there's a bunch of tabs here. The first is just information, has some exam dates, which you should all be familiar with already. The second is the exam preparation page, and that's where we have the candidate guides listed. So you have the knowledge exam from before, we have the skills exam, we have the exam instructions and protocol for how to connect with Monitor EDU, and then we have the new one, which is searching exam aids. So we have information about what to study down here. So if you click on, say, this one, for example, the trademark agent exam, so make the screen a little bit bigger, then you can see we've done the same thing that we did for the knowledge exam, where we kind of combined the test specifications with the competency profile. So on component A of the trademark agent skills exam, you'll see that registrability and strategy are being tested. So the performance criteria, what we're testing you on under registrability are, how to plan a trademark search, how to interpret search results, how to assess descriptiveness. For strategy, how to identify client needs and goals. So these are the types of questions that we're asking you on the trademark agent skills exam. And so you can have a better idea of roughly how much the exam in total is worth for each of the skills areas. So registrability, 25%, strategy, 25%, prosecution, 25%, opposition proceedings and section 45 proceedings, 25%. So that was that little resource that we prepared for you to get a better visual representation of what you're being tested on for the skills exam. You can also actually review the full test specifications. So this where it lists the areas, all of the number of marks, the structural variables, if it's open book, what you have access to, the contextual variables, that's all also available on the website. If you scroll down the page, you will see the sample knowledge exam questions, which you are all familiar with because you have successfully demonstrated competency on that exam. And so you're going to scroll down to the sample skills exams. And we have the full PDFs for the full sample exams posted on the website. One PDF is just the exam, and then the second is the answer key as well. So you can test yourself by completing the full exam and then look at the answer key afterwards to see how close you are to some of the exemplar responses or the sample responses that we have in there. Now we've selected a few of those questions from the samples, and we've actually put them on the computer-based platform to see, so you can have an idea of what that is going to look like. So I'll just make this big here, but you can see when I clicked on component A sample, the instructions are posted, so you can read through these instructions well ahead of time. You can read through the candidate agreement ahead of time. Click on accept and then start, and the sample exam questions will launch for you. So you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, we have the time left counting down from 3 hours. On the right side here, we have the exam aids. So we have the Trademarks Act. If you scroll down here, we can click on, geographical indications and jump down to that section. So that's how the search works on the bookmarks. You also have the French version of the exam as a PDF on the platform. So you can review the question in French if you wanted to see the translation. Also, the English version is available up there as well on the platform. Those are just the questions, not including the key. So you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, this is an example of a split screen question where we have the background materials on one side and the question on the other side. Say I wanted to highlight this sentence here, you just select the text, click on highlight, and you can see that that's been highlighted. If I want to strike through this sentence here, you do the same thing, select the text, click on strike through, and it will strike through the text for you. So you don't want to highlight that, you want to unhighlight it, just reselect the text and remove highlight, and that highlight will be removed for you. So these are all things that you should test during the live proctor check-in next week. You can click into the response box. This is a test, and write some text in there to test that out. Click on the bookmark function and then go down to question review, and you can see I've flagged one question, so that's how the question bookmark section works. Incomplete questions, there are 3. You can see that this question has now turned blue because I've written somewhere in there, but the other 2 are still green because I haven't done them yet. So if you click on question 2, then you can see another sample of one of the questions and how that looks on the website. And then same with question 3, there's another layout potential. So it could just be the information at the top and then the response box underneath if there are multiple questions associated with the background for that question. Down here, you can view questions by clicking on the numbers. So you can click on next to see the next question. You can click on previous to see the previous question. Lots of different ways to navigate. You can also check the navigation bar down here to see how many questions you've completed and how much of the exam you have left to do. So I've answered 1 question, so I've done 1 out of 3, and that's down there for you. You can also increase the font size or decrease the font size during the exam. So I'll make it a medium size here, and I'll make it very large here so you can see what that looks like as well. So those are the different pieces of functionality that we wanted to show you on the exam. When you click on submit, then it will prompt you to make sure that you want to submit the exam. So if you're in the middle of the exam and you click on submit, as long as you click no, then you'll be able to go back to the exam. If you click on submit and then click yes, your exam will be submitted and there won't be any way for you to get it back without proctor intervention and CPATA intervention. So just make sure that when you've completed your exam and you've reviewed all of your responses and you're ready to go, then you click yes and the exam will submit for you. On this page, we don't have the survey link active, but this survey link will be active on this page once you've submitted the exam. So completing the survey at the end of the exam does not have any impact on the time that you get to write the exam. They're completely separate processes. And then you click on close and the exam platform will shut down. So I will go back to our presentation. I'll stop sharing this again. I'll have to current slide. There we go. So much navigation to do when you're sharing screens. Okay, you should now see the contact slide on the website, and I'll hand it over to Tifan to go through that.
Okay, if you have any issues or questions with Monitor Edu, which is our exam provider, you can email them at schedule@monitoredu.com or speak to a lab agent. Any other issue, questions, Jen and I will here to help you. We're here to provide any support you may need for the exam. Email us at registration-inscription@CPATA-CABAMC.ca. If you wish to call, we can schedule a call. We're here to help you, to provide you with the best support we can so you can be successful for the exam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that ends the formal part of the presentation. I'd like to open it up for questions. I saw a few questions come through during the presentation. So you can type them into the Q&A and we'll try to get to everybody's questions. We're still really good on time. But if we're unable to get to a question because we don't have the answer to it, then we'll look it up and we'll get back to everybody via email who's actually attending the exam after this session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can look at the questions.
Yeah, just so you know, the first question they already emailed us, Tara. You can email us regarding your question. We received the email.
Perfect. So Tara was just asking, who does she email about jewelry that can't be removed? So if you have that situation where you have jewelry that can't be removed, please email registration, the registration department, and we will figure that out with you. So we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. The next person had a comment about connecting with the proctor earlier. So during the knowledge exam, they were told to come back at 12:30. So thank you for letting me know that. I will make sure that the proctors are aware that candidates may start connecting with them. Thank you very much, Tifan. That will make sure that the proctors know that candidates can start connecting with proctors as of 12 o'clock, but you will not be able to you won't be able to start the exam until closer to 1 o'clock, if not at 1 o'clock. Okay, so can you provide any information regarding the possibility of having to include other sources than the ACT and regs in the exam responses? The past exams always referred to practice notices, trademark manual, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would say that the sample exam questions on the website right now have a really good indication of the type of information that we're looking for. But if you are asked to provide a source for something, then I would be as detailed as possible. We're not asking you to memorize, the trademark examination manual, for example, and source or provide references specific to that, because you're not getting that during the exam. But if they say that what's the authority for this and it's a practice notice, then I would indicate what type of practice notice it was, maybe the name of the practice notice. That type of information would be what the examination advisory group would be looking for in terms of detailed responses. So for part B, component B, you also get a third exam aid, and that's the NICE classification chart. So you don't have to, for example, memorize the NICE classification chart. That will be provided to you as an exam aid through the platform. Another question about plugging in a keyboard instead of using your laptop keyboard. You can use whatever keyboard you need is good for you to use. Like right now, I'm not using my laptop keyboard. I'm using a Bluetooth connected keyboard to make sure that I can type. As long as you are able to test that during the live proctor check-in and there's no functionality issues there, then there shouldn't be any issues with you using like a Bluetooth connected mouse or a Bluetooth connected keyboard. Those things should still work for you. Will all the questions be long form or will there be some multiple choice as well? That's a great question. And so this exam is not the same as the knowledge exams. The knowledge exams were 100% multiple choice. There are 0 multiple choice questions on this exam. The skills exam are performance-based constructed response questions, meaning we give you a fact-based scenario, some kind of information, and we ask you something about that. And I would definitely look at the sample exams for some examples of the types of questions that you might see on the real exam. But you'll see that there aren't any true or false, and there aren't any multiple choice questions. These are testing skills. They're not testing knowledge concepts. Another question, if you were unsuccessful with the 2023 trademark qualifying exam, does that count toward the 2 allowable attempts for the skills exams? No, that's a really good question, and that does not account. So the 2 attempts are starting with the 2024 skills exams. They're not retroactively being applied to any of the 2023 or previous legacy exams. So if you attempt the 2024 skills exam and you're not able to demonstrate competency, then you can attempt the 2025 skills exams. And if you're still unable to demonstrate competency, then that remedial training and education piece would come into play. Next question, will some questions require you to answer with case law? I would say that you should be familiar with important cases and current cases that are important to the areas of trademark agent practice. Again, we're not asking you to memorize anything specific, but it would be important for you to be aware of important cases or anything that might be like kind of like a landmark case, if you will, for the practice of being a trademark agent. Are the sample exam questions available on the CPATA site representative of the level of difficulty seen in the actual exam? So the questions that are on the sample exam are to give candidates an idea of the type of questions that we might be asking. The level of difficulty may differ from administration to administration, and that's why we can't provide any information about a pass mark because that's determined after the exam based on the difficulty of the form. Another question, similar to the knowledge exam, are there any questions that are entered as a test question or quote, I would say, I think you're referring to an experimental question that will not be included in the final score? And that's another really good question. And no, on the skills exam, there are not any questions that don't count. All of the questions and all of the marks on the skills exams will count toward the final result. There aren't any experimental items on the skills exams. Should the exam actually take the full 3 hours? So when we had the pilot testers do the exams, then they indicated to us that they were able to complete the exam within the 3-hour time frame, as well as review their answers. So we do expect you to be able to complete the exam within the 3-hour time frame. A competent test taker should be able to complete the exam within a 3-hour time frame. And so that is why it has been set for 3 hours. Next question has to do with the pass rate for the skills exams, and we don't know that. There's nothing that we can, we don't have any information about the pass rate until the exam is actually administered and the pass mark has been approved by the registration committee. So just like with the knowledge exams, we will be communicating the pass rate for the skills exam administration. So out of X number of candidates, how many demonstrated competency? But we won't know that until the results are out, which will probably be in early 2025 for the skills exam. Oh, that was your next question. So when the results are expected to come out in early 2025, that is because this is the first administration this year. There's a holiday break in between, and we want to make sure that we have the proper checks and balances in place to ensure the accuracy of the results before they're disseminated out to the candidates. So that is expected in January. Again, for one of the questions we got for the knowledge exams was, do we want a specific pass rate, or do we want X number of people to be able to pass and X number of people to fail? And that's not what CPATA does in terms of policy. Whatever the pass rate is, the pass rate is. Obviously, we are happy if it is a high pass rate, because that means that candidates are able to demonstrate their competency, and that the system is making sure that we're able to distinguish between candidates who are competent from candidates who are not yet competent. But we're not aiming for a specific pass rate or anything like that. Obviously, we want people to be successful, but we will not fail people or not let people through just to meet a quota or something like that. All right, I think I've gone through all the questions that have been posted so far. Sorry, Tifat?
I'm just saying you did. If you have any other question in French, for example, just write it down in French and I can translate it, or can ask one of our interpreters to translate as well.
Yeah, thank you. Some really good questions, though. Thank you, everyone who was asking questions. I'll just say a few final words in case. Oh, thank you so much. Very much. I appreciate that comment. We will be around. So Tifan and I are around the rest of this week. We are around next week. We are around during exam week. We will be monitoring the registration inbox during the exam, before the exam, after the exam. Please feel free to provide your feedback in the survey and let us know if there's anything that we need to know about from the exam administration, because that feedback is very important for us to understand the context of how the exam was written, and if there was anything that impacted anybody that would be taken into account for the pass mark review process.
One question.
Oh, yeah. Can we use shortcuts to reference act and regulations? Oh, that's a good example, or good question. So abbreviations. I would say I think that there were a few that are listed in the candidate guide as being acceptable, like TMA, Trademark Act, TMR, Trademark Regulation. So I would say that you should review the candidate guide for some of those pre-approved abbreviations to make sure that the exam advisory board who's reviewing your submission and marking your submission knows what you're trying to get across there. So I would definitely look at the candidate guide for those details. Another question, are there any negative marks? So can somebody, can we give, if a question is worth 5, instead of granting 5 marks, can we say -5 and then just have somebody in the negatives? And no, we do not do that. That is not something that we do on the trademark agent skills examination. If you receive marks, then that is because you have demonstrated that you were able to do something, but you're not penalized for getting something wrong. Should we have received an email confirmation or exam registration like we did for the knowledge exam? So you'll get that on Friday. We always want to do the candidate orientation first, just to see if there's any questions that come out of it where we need to do some research and get back to the group, so we can do that all at the same time when the confirmation goes out. But we will be sending out those confirmations of registration on Friday. That will be a PDF emailed from myself, and it will include your candidate ID. If you've consented to have your results provided to your supervisor or your firm, so you'll be able to confirm that or change that if you change your mind based on what you've submitted on your initial registration form. It'll confirm the language that you're writing the exam in. It'll also confirm if you've had any approved accommodations granted for the examination, and it'll be included in both English and French. So that will come to you on Friday before 5 o'clock Eastern time, this Friday, September the 6th. All right. Oh, okay. If I chose to have the exam in English but answer one question in French, is that okay? That's completely up to you. If you want to write the exam in English, so what will happen is the exam platform will be administered in the language that you chose to write in. So if you chose English, then the questions will be presented to you in English. You'll also be able to see the French version on the exam aids PDF section, but you're more than welcome to respond to the question in French if that's how you wish to do so. We'll just make sure that the exam is marked by a French-speaking exam advisory group member, but there shouldn't be any issue to that if that's how you wish to proceed. Will there be a mark breakdown in the exam aids? No, there's not going to be any mark breakdown in the exam aids, but the sample exam, it pretty much is the mark breakdown that you are going to be looking at for this exam. So in terms of the content, that will definitely be different. But if question 1 is X number of marks on the sample exam, then question 1 will be X number of marks on the real exam. So there isn't anything different in terms of what we are presenting to you on the actual exam form, in terms of the number of questions that you're going to have to answer, or how the marks are broken up between those questions. All right. Every time I say all right, I think we've gone through all of our questions. A few more pop up, so I'll do it again just to see if anything else comes through. We do
And
have
just feel
lots.
free to email us if you have a question that comes up later this week, or even like after that.
Yep, if something comes up, even after as soon as we click end webinar, if something comes up that you forgot to ask or you don't feel comfortable asking during the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us via email. Tifan and I are happy to answer. So for any given question, we won't know how many marks are being allocated for our answer. So I'm not exactly sure I understand your question. I'll just pull up the sample exam though, maybe on the website, just to give you an idea of what I was trying to get at. Alrighty, here, let me just try to share my answer. Share my screen. Okay. So this is the sample exam that is on the website. You can see the first page has a bunch of disclaimers on it, some instructions that are pretty much the same instructions that you see on the platform. Question 1, so question 1, 12 marks. You're likely going to be asked something very similar to this, but with a different fact pattern. So I would go through the questions and see what is being provided and what is being asked as an example of what you will be seeing on the actual exam form itself. If we look at the actual the answer key, then this is a sample response. So the following sample answer would receive full marks, and this is just something that is for illustrative purposes only, so that candidates can understand where marks would come from and what a full mark response looks like. So for the question number 2, prepare a note to your new trademark agent in training that briefly outlines the instructions to conduct an effective trademark search in this instance. So bullet points are fine. The following sample answer would receive full marks. So this is the type of information that we would be looking for on the actual exam itself. I'll stop sharing.
We do have a question in French, but I think you can understand the question.
Yes, we will. So I'm going to reshare. I keep sharing and unsharing. 1 second. So on component B, so I'm going to launch component B on the platform. Helps if I click share. So I'm launched component B on the platform. And you'll see in the exam aid section that there is another PDF, and that is the NICE class classification chart. So you can see it, there is an English version and a French version. Oh, this one just has the English version. I think they've added the French version on that side, but on the actual exam platform, both the English and the French will be available within the same exam aids. So for part B, for component B, you will have access to this. For component A, you will have only access to the Act and the regulations. So again, the idea is not to trick anybody. The idea is to give everybody a fair opportunity to demonstrate that they have the skills to practice as a trademark agent at the entry level. And the entire examination has been overhauled in order to meet that goal. Okay. I think I just answered that, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Béatrice, on a juste répondu à la question. Oui, pour la composante B.
Merci. So yes, the NICE classification is available on component B as an exam aid. You do not have to memorize that. You're welcome. Okay. I think that might end our question and answer session. If something comes through at this point, then we will note it down and we will get back to that person. But everything should be available to you on the website. We have lots of resources there for you. Definitely do your live proctor check-in next week. Do not skip that. It is mandatory. And if you don't do it and something happens on the exam day, then we might count that as an attempt. So it's important for you to make sure that you do your due diligence in making sure that your system is ready and set up. You can request to nullify an examination attempt to the registrar per that policy, but if it doesn't meet the requirements, then it might count toward one of your 2 attempts and you haven't even written it. So it's really, really, really important. I cannot stress this enough for you to do the live proctor check-in next week. Even if you wrote well, I mean, you all did. Even though you wrote the exam in March, systems change, updates can happen in your computer, which now will cause some issue for the exam secure browser to not open. So you really just want to make sure that on exam days, you can focus completely on demonstrating your competency and not having to worry about technology. Okay, so I will ask our friends Dana and Andres to end our recordings this afternoon.